Right.
Inzaghi actually brought up that free kick as saying, like, after that, the match completely changed.
Mm-hmm. So imagine if that doesn't go in. Lautaro kind of just, he puts his heel to the side and he almost gets a touch. If he gets a touch and that goes out, Milan never scores, we wouldn't be talking about this, you know? Those are the fine details about football where it can all go wrong all of a sudden.
My goodness, from 2-0 down to Supercoppa Italiana winners, AC Milan have now won their 8th Supercoppa Italiana title. They are now second on the list, only behind Juventus. And what a few weeks it has been for Sérgio Conceição. 2 matches in charge, 2 wins, 1 trophy. What has he unleashed, Lahoud, in this Milan side that they were in a position to make this very, very unlikely comeback in such a dramatic fashion?
We've criticized Milan this year, and we've talked a lot, I should say, about 2 players, and 2 players alone. Rafa Leão, well, 3 with Milan. Thank you. I could see the smile. But 2 players that looked disgruntled under the previous manager, Paulo Fonseca, Rafael Leão and Theo Hernández. And the game changed when Leão came on the pitch. Yes, subs made by Inter was one thing, but you got to take advantage of who's on the field and who's not. And I just was looking at the body language of those 2 players in this match. And Rafa Leão, as soon as he came on, he won a free kick where he beat 2 or 3 players. And immediately you thought, oh man, there's something different about this guy. He looks bought in, he looks like he actually gives a damn and is inspired to play football. Sometimes as a football manager, it's not so much about the X's and O's, it's about getting inspiration and getting buy-in early on from 2 of your best players.
They didn't just need someone to come in and be a tactician that could make their players play better and put them in better positions, which I think we've seen Conceição make some decisions that I think have benefited each of the teams. It's not so much to come in and get, have this understanding of where players need to be. It's, can you get through to the player? Can you get these players, in particular the players you mentioned, in Leão and Theo Hernández, to play at a level that they weren't playing under Fonseca? Can they buy in? And immediately, Conceição, a manager that is known to be contentious if he needs to be, he'll butt heads with the players if he needs to. He wants to be the alpha in the room. And for him to get the buy-in immediately from these players, Leão coming off the bench, where in the past that might be an issue for him.
Does that say more about Fonseca, though, that how unhappy and how contentious things were?
100%.
Look at this. Look at that. Fonseca wouldn't be doing this in the club.
But this is the other side of him, Alexis. That he's got personality. Nico,
show us.
You were giving us a little
something,
salsita before that.
No, you got too much rhythm. He's a little stiffer in the hips.
So
it's a lot of thrust.
When we see the celebrations, one thing that caught my eye, Theo Hernández was in the background. And he was smiling again. And Nico was dancing again. But Theo Hernández was smiling again. Rafa Leão just has that $1 million smile back on his face. And that tells me that these players, they are having fun again. And under Stefano Pioli, they have the freedom to express themselves. It just seemed like Paulo Fonseca, he picked a fight almost to kind of prove his worth, to say, this is my team, and you're going to do things my way. And if you don't do things my way, then you're going to pay the price. And I'm going to make an example out of my 2 best players and biggest personalities by putting them on the bench at different times. And it was just one big disaster.
I don't want to discredit anything that Sérgio Conceição achieved this weekend, because obviously he won 2 really important games.
Sounds
in
like
his
you're
first
about
games.
to, though.
I'm about to
I don't mean no
discredit.
disrespect, but I'm about to disrespect you.
No, I'm not, because it might be interpreted as disrespect, but this is the easier part. Your best players, motivating them, they were disgruntled, unhappy with another coach. The guy comes in and he puts his arm around their shoulder, quite literally, and says, you're going to be my guy. We're going to figure this out. Right? We've seen many, many flashes of world class from Leão and Theo. We know that they have that.
But this isn't just that.
Hold on.
Okay.
But my point is that in 2 really big games where the players, it's Milan, we're not talking about Sassuolo, we're talking about Milan. They're going to be up for these games.
No,
now,
you're talking about Milan against Inter Milan.
Wait a minute. Let this man finish.
Let me finish what I'm going to say. Because this is the easier part. Not that it's easy, it's the easier part to get these guys on board. New manager, all right, new page, let's do this. Now, over the longer period of time, is where you show the X's and O's, the tactics of how this team is going to improve, so that these 2 games aren't just one-offs.
Okay, yeah, you're not wrong. The Supercoppa Italiana is not the biggest trophy that AC Milan, a club with a historic run, a club that denotes history in major competitions. Certainly this isn't the biggest competition won, but they, coming back from a very mediocre season, have just beaten Inter Milan in the final after being down 2-0, something Inter Milan has never done.
That's unbelievable. I mean, and that's why I'm not discrediting what Sérgio Conceição did.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Nico, but he's coming in at a very favorable time. You look up their schedule coming up, the likes of a Como, the likes of a Cagliari, Juventus, the biggest match, Girona after that in the Champions League. So it's very favorable.
Match day 8 in Champions League.
Zagreb away. Very favorable fixture list coming up for him to implement the tactics. And I do want to give him credit for tactics he did implement, because when we were previewing what to expect from Fonseca and going back to his FC Porto days, he showed the flexibility to play a 4-3-3, a 4-2-3-1. In this match late on, the guy who scored the match-winning goal, Tammy Abraham, you see the emotions, what it meant to him. He went with 2 strikers late on, and that made all the world of difference. Milan were so direct. Christian Pulisic, he was able to have flexibility and freedom to come in centrally into half spaces, go wide as he loves to do. Rafael Leão, those 2 players combined in spaces that you normally wouldn't see them combine in if it was just under Fonseca, just 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, and you stay on your side, you stay on your side, and you stay within the system.
This is a very telling graphic, by the way. You know, it's basically saying that if Fonseca was in charge in this game going down 2-0, there's no way that they are winning.
No way. They had no personality.
No way.
They were lifeless at points under Fonseca. They gave up. They would rather give up than fight back. And obviously, Sérgio Conceição brought that fight in these 2 games. And like you said tactically about Pulisic, yesterday Pulisic played left wing, played in the center, played in the right. And the pass that he gives Leão for the winner, it's not a pattern of play that we too often see Pulisic in. We're talking about this theme of grinta, of grit, right? That with Milan, it's a non-negotiable, right?
It's of Italy.
Of Italy. It's the Uruguayan version of grinta. But with Milan, a club like this, that's non-negotiable. That should be standard. And a guy, and I think to your friend's point, a guy that kind of does bring that grinta week in, week out. He might not be the highest rated player on the team, but the reason he became the best player on the team for the entire season up till now is because he was one of the few guys that showed the grinta despite the situation.
How long ago were we talking about him getting bullied out of taking a penalty?
No, we had this conversation on this show about whether or not Christian Pulisic could be the guy on Milan if this was his team. I think unequivocally he absolutely is. He is by far their most important player. He is stepping into that role. Did you see the way he celebrated yesterday? What this meant to him, winning a trophy with AC Milan. This is his team. I'm sorry. I'm going to make the argument that this is his team.
Susan, I want to back you up on that. I think when you look at the body of work, not just this season, but what started last season, the consistency that he's playing with, but also the big game presence in the biggest games in Italian football and the biggest games in European football this season. Who has been the constant factor for Milan? In the midst of chaos, turbulence, in the midst
Fofana, I know.
So good.
Fofana in the last 2 months. But I just love seeing Christian's development. I love the impact that it's going to have for the U.S. men's national team, because we've seen the men's national team be an oasis for players who are out of favor for their club team. They come back, but it's infectious when you're around a player like that for a U.S. player. But now that infectiousness in terms of the character he has, in terms of the work rate, things that come with being an American that I think oftentimes in seasons past, Europeans would just say, Americans, they just work hard, they just run. But this guy has the qualities, a match winner, week in and week out for Milan, and he is the guy right now. And because of him, Milan have their first trophy of the season. Yes, Leão, he came to life. Yes, Theo came to life. But because of Christian Pulisic continuing to be that catalyst, continuing to be the talisman for Milan, things are looking brighter just a bit more.
He's getting better and better. All right, I want to chat on the Inter side of this, because they go up, I said it before, they go up 2-0. You think they've got this in the bag. You said it, Alexis. They don't give up leads under Inzaghi. This is not something that they do. Was he outcoached by Conceição in this one?
I think that in the end, when you look at how the game unfolded, right before that second goal comes, a player that I want to give a big shout out to is Mike Mignon. I thought behind Christian, behind Theo, he was the biggest thing to happen, and missed chances is what cost Inter this match. They're up 2-0. They get 2 or 3 chances. Denzel Dumfries has a golden opportunity, 1v1 with Maignan, and Maignan makes a blockbuster save. He had 6 saves on the day, and I think he was the difference between this being 3 or 4-0, which it looked like it was heading in that direction. Sorry, Milan did score in the second half. For it being 3-1 or 4-1, or Milan coming back into the match. And I think it was just not taking advantage of your opportunities when you had them.
He missed a lot of opportunities, Dumfries. They had a couple of good looks, Inter. And Aslani, who came on in the first half for Hakan Çalhanoğlu because of injury, was not good whatsoever. He was awful. And yes, I think I don't know if he was outcoached. When I think of outcoached, I think of
Don't say Ruben Amorim.
No, not Ronald Koeman. Van Gaal. I think of Van Gaal against Berhalter at the World Cup in the round of 16.
Absolutely.
That it was that was like a masterclass. That was outcoached. It's like a arm wrestling that just goes, oh yeah, boom. I didn't feel like it was like that yesterday because Inter had a lot of control in the game. And then when he brought on Leão and he made those couple of adjustments, Leão came on, Pulisic moved to the right side.
I'm going to push back on this a little bit though, because
let me finish.
On this show we talked about how stacked Inter Milan are. No?
Yes, okay. He made the right calls. I don't know if that's outcoached, but what
they hadn't given up a goal in 5 matches.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Did he get outcoached? I agree with you. I don't think outcoached is the right term, but that's a great question because it forces you to make a decision, yes or no, and it feels closer to a yes than a no, even though it isn't a yes. And whatever I just said sounds confusing to you. It sounds confusing to me in my head. But what I think happened was, if you ask Inzaghi, who was asked after the match, he said, we were not able to shut the door, which, they weren't able to close it out. We left the door open, they took advantage, and our defending was tired. That tells me that you knew that and you didn't make a decision to affect it either way. And I give Inzaghi a ton of credit for his tactics. I think he's one of the most tactically astute managers we have in the game today. I love what he's doing. His inability to see that in the moment and make those changes when Conceição did leads me to believe that maybe it's 51-49. But I think you're right. I think he was outcoached.
I think the difference between the two managers, you look at who needed the game more and who was just there to see the game out and put a professional performance. Milan needed this game to turn their season around or have any hope of turning their season around. They played like it was a true cup final. You saw the approach they had, pressing, being aggressive, much more aggressive, and staying within the match, knowing that they had the goalkeeper that would keep them in the match, and they were waiting for that one moment to breathe life back into it, which came in the second half. I just thought Inter were playing like a side that had one eye on the Scudetto and one eye on this match.
Yeah.
The subs they made 65, 66 minutes in, you take one of the best fullbacks in world football in Federico Di Marco off the pitch, who was excellent when he was on the pitch. You take your midfield, Zielinski comes in, and it changes the dynamic a bit. It just gave that feeling of, for the next 25 minutes, they were just going to see it out. They had command of the match. It was going their way until it wasn't. And it was a bit, kind of un-Inzaghi-ish to do that, to not see it all the way through.
Lock up shop. Right?
Yeah.
They usually 2-0. Like, when are they going to squander 2-0 lead? In fact, like you guys said,
they hadn't given up a goal in 5 games.
And they had never lost when winning 2-0 under Inzaghi. And it did feel like, all right, we can see this game out. There's a confidence about it that obviously maybe almost unexpectedly they didn't foresee that Milan would fight back. Again, football's about details, right? The free kick at the edge of the box that came moments after the ball on the goal line that got taken away, that was crazy, right? The one, who was it? It was Barella on Yunus Musa. I forget. That became so unimportant later to the game that I forgot who that was. The free kick, Sommer gets beat at his post. His positioning is so bad. it almost made me question that if he had set up the wall on the right side, but he did set it up right.
Inzaghi actually brought up that free kick as saying, like, after that, the match completely changed.
So imagine if that doesn't go in. Lautaro kind of just, he puts his heel to the side and he almost gets a touch. If he gets a touch and that goes out, Milan never scores, we wouldn't be talking about this. You know, those are the fine details about football where it can all go wrong all of a sudden.
That's wild.